Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. This is our ninth episode, and with me, as always, is my awesome co host, Mr. Roger Stokes. Say hi, Raj.
Hi, Raj. How's it going? I always have to do that. Welcome, everybody. We're super excited today to welcome our guest, Cheryl Carter. She has an extensive background that we'll be discussing today, and we'll definitely jump into that. But so excited to have you all here and joining us for our ninth episode, and want you to enjoy. So let's jump right in, Jim.
All right, fantastic. Well, Cheryl, you've got a really interesting background, and so to get started, as Roger mentioned, you're an author, you're a paranormal investigator, you have experiences with remote viewing, psychic abilities, and you're also a moderator on several Facebook groups, if I'm not mistaken. So, Cheryl, go ahead and just kind of give us the brief overview and introduction as to who Cheryl Carter is.
Well, I'm a psychic medium, remote viewer, born this way. And I think I had my first experience when I was 4 years old. So, like I said, it's just always been with me. I never grew up in a haunted house. I've just had spirits around me. So it's not my other family didn't have experienced this stuff. I'm an author of 7 books. I have my own column in a magazine called Paranormal Underground Magazine, and it's called The Carter Files: Mysteries of the Unknown. Those are mostly stories about UFOs.
Right on. So, Roger, you have a little bit in common there with Cheryl as far as having not necessarily grown up in a haunted house, but Roger's had quite a few experiences with spirits being around him, and has even he's had some pretty intense contacts, right, Raj?
Yes. I've grown up with spirits around me. Ever since I was little, probably around the same age, and continue to do so to this day. So definitely something that we have in common, and it's very interesting. Not everybody understands what we can see and what we can
Exactly.
hear and what we can feel. So yes, it's nice to know somebody that has fellow experiences with myself, and yeah, looking forward to talking about that more.
Yep. And kind of like how who is it? I think Dragon from the Skinwalker Ranch team describes himself as being paranormal kryptonite. I'm kind of that same way with the paranormal experiences. They just don't happen to me very often. Now, I have had some, but nowhere on the order of what Roger has. So we'll definitely get into some of that a little bit later. But for those wondering, we actually, Roger and I, got to meet Cheryl last year at Phenomicon, which, of course, is the this great event that Uinta County in Utah put on. And of course, it's right in the backyard of Skinwalker Ranch and some of the amazing things that are out in northeastern Utah. And Cheryl and Roger and I, we were invited to a special VIP breakfast one of the mornings to have a exclusive interview with the members of Skinwalker Ranch, the team there at Skinwalker Ranch, and Cheryl sat at our table, and that was kind of the first time I got a chance to talk to Cheryl, and found her to be such a wonderful, just a great. Speaking of spirits, a great spirit to be around, a uh, great conversation that we had there at that table. So Roger and I have been looking forward to this opportunity to speak with you today for really ever since Phenomicon. So, and speaking of Phenomicon, Roger and I cannot wait to go back. This will be our
Me
third year.
too. Me too. I'll see you
Wonderful.
there. I'll see you there.
Excellent. So Cheryl, let's kick off and start talking about some of your books. And
Okay.
I've got one of my favorites of yours right here, the Skinwalker Ranch, The Basin Files, which is credited to you and Ryan Skinner. So for me, I've been a Skinwalker Ranch. I've had an interest in Skinwalker Ranch ever since going back to about 2006, which was when I first read the Hunt for the Skinwalker book that Colm Kelleher and George Knapp wrote
Mhm.
together. And so ever since then, long before the TV show, long before it really kind of came into some more of the mainstream awareness, if you will. and so I'd done my research quite thoroughly on not just Skinwalker Ranch, but learning that that whole region out there in the Uinta Basin
Exactly.
is literally, I mean, it's thriving with activity of all kinds, not just UFO and UAP or cryptids. There's just some really, there's a very special energy about that area, and I'm sure you're probably tuned into that a little bit. But
Mhm.
what I really wanted to commend both you and Ryan on was the amount of research that you put into this amazing book, The Basin Files. So, can you talk to us a little bit about how that book developed for you?
I'm a member of MUFON, so it was kind of easy for me to go into the MUFON files, to go into NICAP and get actual reports from regular people that have reported things that they've seen in the Uinta Basin.
Nice. So, did you get a chance to did you and Ryan yourselves interview any of the people that were out there, or was it just information that you culled from the MUFON reports?
These are just from the reports. In the first book, I did interview some people.
Nice. And so, of all the stories and accounts that you've read, what are some of the ones that stick out the most in your mind, that are the most impressive to you?
Well, there's like a commonality though, but they all saw something strange, lights. There are many different shapes though. I don't know if you've ever read the Utah UFO display book
Hmm.
by Junior Hicks,
Junior Hicks. Yep.
where he's got all these amazing drawings from people in the basin.
Right.
And that's what I found from the reports. They weren't all the disc shape objects. They were all different shapes, but they all were very quiet. They made no noise. There were bright lights around them, and they would come in fast and they would leave fast too. So that is common no matter what the shape is. Are they different from different places? Are they like us, different cars like we have, different kinds? Who knows?
Right. And that's one of the things that I've always found interesting is I mean, by nature, I mean, I can't even begin to explain what I think might be uh what the cause of a lot of this phenomenon is. I mean, it could be the simple, nuts and bolts ET hypothesis that's in play out there. It could be interdimensional. It could be, some lost, unknown civilization that is advanced than us, more advanced than us, but that's always been here on Earth. But there is definitely a lot of commonalities between the craft that you're talking about. Not, I mean, obviously they vary in shape, but some of the similarities are the fact that they're completely silent. They seem to be um, self-luminating, like there doesn't appear to be, what we would call a man-made, like they're not landing lights or things like that. They actually appear to be creating their own luminescence, as it were, if that's even a word. But
Well, and they're also able to be coming one direction and just make a 360-degree turn and go back another way. Planes can't do that.
right, right. Well, and,
But the,
and
the one I saw did that. It was amazing.
fantastic. So you've actually seen one then,
Yeah, this is crazy. You want to talk about portals. People don't believe in portals. But all I know is I looked up in the sky one day, clear blue sky, no clouds, and the sky like ripped open. And I said, what the heck? And this silver, mine was the disc shaped one, came out of this rip and it just hovered there for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And I couldn't take my eyes off it.
right?
Everything around me just stopped. I don't know if anybody else saw this, if it was just for me. Maybe I wasn't supposed to see it. I don't know. And then the sky opened up. It went right back inside and the sky closed. That's crazy.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing.
That is so cool. Roger, I myself have never seen a UFO, but I can tell you I 100% believe in portals because I have seen a portal open out there in the Uinta Basin many years ago. It wasn't out by Skinwalker Ranch. But it was still within kind of like the outskirts of the basin, probably a good, what would you say, Raj? Probably a good hour or so to the north and west from where the ranch is.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where you don't know if you're dreaming or you wide awake,
Yeah.
and it just kind of sets everything that you believe about reality. It breaks your reality. It literally, that's the best phrase that I've heard, is that
Mm-hmm.
it breaks reality, and all of a sudden everything that you have come to know and understand about what we define as reality and what is possible, not just physically, but just, we're talking the realm of what most people would ascribe to comic books, fairy tales, science fiction, but yet it's happening right there in front of my eyes, and I'm fully lucid. I'm wide awake, and it's a life changing experience. It really is. So I myself didn't see any craft come in and out of the portal, but I could see very clearly what was on the other side of it. Um, and it was really, it took me a long time to figure out. It took me a couple of years to put it together that what I saw that day was in fact a portal to
What was on
somewhere.
the other side? What did you see on the other side?
Well, what it was is I was climbing up. I was hiking up a mountain in a remote part of Utah, up high in the Uintas, and I was approaching this clearing up at about maybe around 8,000 feet or thereabouts elevation, and I saw what looked like and this was probably sometime between 11 a.m. and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so full midday, and I saw what looked like coming through a little spot of trees, what looked to be a somebody with a really powerful spotlight, because it was like a whitish color light, not too dissimilar from the whiteness of my ring light here, but and I'm thinking, wow, it's bright and sunny. Who would need a spotlight?
Mhm.
And it starts, moving toward me gradually, and then got to be what I would say maybe about maybe a couple hundred yards away from me, and I could see that there was nobody behind it. There was nobody carrying that big spotlight, and it started to all of a sudden the and the weird thing was it wasn't circular shaped. It was kind of amorphous. It was kind of, I mean,
Mhm.
it wasn't a perfect sphere, like you would see in like in the Marvel movies, how Doctor Strange, when he does the thing and
Yeah.
the,
Or
the portal.
flashlight. Yeah.
It wasn't anything like that, but the center of it just started gradually getting darker and started, kind of moving toward the edges of where the brighter part of it was, and it got to maybe, I want to say maybe about 25, 30 feet away from me. And the one thing I noticed is it was like somebody turned off all the sound where I was on the mountain. I mean, there
Mhm.
was no wind, there was no birds chirping, there was no crickets, there was not a lick of a breeze, nothing at all. And so it was kind of like almost being in a vacuum, I would describe it. But what happened is I could see inside, and I wasn't sure what it was, but all of a sudden I could see there was like this stone, or some kind of stone or brick room, and it was kind of
Wow.
dark and gray. And I'm just looking at it going, what the heck? Because it was probably, I would say it was maybe about I'd say somewhere between maybe 6, 7 feet, wide, and it was probably a good, 4 or 5 feet off the ground, maybe my best estimate. But it was like I didn't know what it was. It's like this is the most bizarre thing. What the heck is this? I mean, because I could see there was nobody behind it. There was, I could see the trees and the rest of the mountain that should have been in my view behind where this
Mhm.
thing wasn't there. And just it stayed that way for maybe, it seemed like it was longer, but my guess is it was probably no more than a minute or two that it stayed. And then just as quickly as it appeared, it just started to kind of collapse on itself and dissipate, and just, just kind of vanished into nothing. And it was like, at the time I was like, the heck was that?
I know, I know.
What was I seeing? So, so when I hear these stories, particularly in the Uinta Basin and at Skinwalker Ranch, um, I believe them. I believe that it's possible, and Roger and I have talked a lot on some of our previous episodes where my personal belief is, as far as portals go, is that's I think that if you think of it in terms of there being like a veil of sorts, of something that separates our dimension from other dimensions, or the spirit realm, whatever you want to call it, I think that those dimensions tend to occasionally bleed into each other, or the
I was
veil.
gonna say that. That's what I see. I
Yeah,
see that. And I don't think it would be a good idea if they did bleed into each other.
yeah.
Do you? I don't know.
It's and I know that I firmly believe that there are people such as yourself that have that gift of sight, and I know I've talked to some people that have it that say, well, it's not really a gift. Sometimes it can be a really difficult thing to live with. It sometimes it can be traumatic, as I can imagine. But I think that that's I think that these portals, these interdimensional gateways, whether they're done on purpose, and I have no idea why I saw what I saw. I have some theories, but it's not something that most people, when I tell the story, they're like, okay, Jim, what were you drinking that day? It's like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah.
I
You
don't.
were high up. You were high up there, Jim. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
You
you
were.
were. Yeah, the mountain wasn't the only thing that was high, was it,
Yeah,
Jim?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
No, I saw we do I belong to a CE5 group, and talk about these balls of light, and we do the singing bowls sometimes, and this actually attracts something.
mhm.
I'm not saying it's ETs, but it's obviously otherworldly, whatever it is. And we're usually by these woods. And this one time we're sitting in a circle and I'm facing the woods, and it looked like somebody turned on two flashlights. And I said, okay, who's out in the woods, trying to come up to us? And I looked, and it was just lights. And it was far enough away that I would say they were like basketball size. They were big.
Wow.
And then the two lights started changing places. They were like dancing back and forth to the singing bowls. And I got pictures on my FLIR, and I didn't think about hitting record when they were moving around, but I did get pictures. And I'm trying to show people in the group. I go, look, and they go, that's nothing. And they're looking up in the sky. I go, well, something's happening right here in the ground, but they didn't want to look. And so the one kind of stood up like one of those squiggly balloons on the street corner
Hmm.
that they have to advertise thing. It was doing that. It was swaying to the music of the singing bowls. Then it went back down into the circle shape. They changed places a couple times. Then it was like somebody just turned both the lights off. What it was, I don't know.
That's awesome. I I've done a fair amount of reading about the CE5 stuff, and um who was is it Dr. Greer who was the one that really is credited with developing that? Is that am I right on that?
We don't exactly do what he does, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's definitely something to it. I myself don't have the courage to do that, because I'm knowing my luck. If I did that, my contact would be malevolent of some kind. Because
But you're gonna be with a group of people, and it's if you have good energy in the group, we've never attracted anything bad.
no.
No, no.
Well, I think particularly when you're talking about the singing bowls, I think frequency plays a big role
Exactly,
in
exactly.
and how these things happen. And I'm not one of these people that gets into the whole 5G. There's a lot of theories, or some people call them conspiracies, about these 5G cell phone towers. But I do have one interesting point, and Roger can verify this with me as well. But I have a brother who lives on a remote property up in Idaho, and he's got a 5G cell phone tower on his property,
Wow.
up high in the mountains. And he notices that every time they fire up or they boost that signal on the 5G tower, really strange things start to happen. He starts hearing, well, for one thing, he starts seeing UAPs, just exactly what you're describing. He sees these orbs. And in
Mhm.
fact, he sent Roger and I, well, he sent me and then I sent it on to Roger, this, these pictures that he got of some orbs, multicolored orbs, and they're clearly not lens flares. He's describing them to me as he's seeing them. And so he sees these orbs that behave in the typical characteristic manner. They're clearly under some kind of intelligent, almost like a self-aware
Exactly.
consciousness.
Yeah, yeah.
And they can go from moving very slow, kind of just like thoughtlessly meandering, and then just instantly whisk away and like stop on a dime, and then
Hmm.
really extraordinary movements. But also what he has begun noticing is that there is some kind of a creature. He cannot see it. He can hear it. And he says the sounds of it, he says it, and Roger can tell you, my brother is a pretty big guy like me. He's a very strong guy. He's not somebody that has ever placed a lot of stock in things of the paranormal until recently when he started experiencing these things on his own property. And so he's got a wood pile on his property, and he goes out and mainly right around twilight time, he goes out to gather or chop wood from this pile, and he will start hearing these really low guttural growls. And he lives in an area that there's a lot of mountain lion, cougars. It's bear country, but this is during the season when bears are supposed to be hibernating. And the important thing is there's never any tracks. There's never any evidence. And my brother,
Bigfoot.
well,
Bigfoot.
well, that's exactly what I'm getting to, because there's a lot of Native American legends, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with some of them. There's a couple of Native American legends that indicate that the creature that we would call Sasquatch or Bigfoot can actually draw energy of some kind from trees, from wood, and that there is this belief that they are able to remain cloaked or hidden from our view, which is why whatever you want to call it, whether they're hopping from one dimension to the other, um, it seems to fit the pattern simply by what my brother is telling me, because my brother is not the kind of guy that would go around just making something like this up and just to put that out there. I mean, he's a very um, very logical, a very level-headed, rational person, and he's begun having these experiences, and it's like, wow, my
Did he hear any tree knocking or
yes, he's heard some of that, and
see? Yeah.
he says that at one point he got with what he estimates to be maybe no more than 10 feet away from this thing, and he says it's almost like he says it's not like a growling like you would expect from a big cat or from a dog. He said this definitely sounded like a human, like a you know like something along those lines, but far more menacing. And so he and I began talking about, we hear about infrasound, which is something that we know that big animals like tigers and lions, they're
Hmm.
they have that growl, and that frequency that I was talking about a moment ago just happens to cause it triggers an innate fear in humans and
Exactly.
any other kind of quote unquote prey for one of these big predator animals. And so I think that infrasound is one of the things that they may use to communicate with, because we can't hear it. I mean, I'm an audio engineer by trade,
Mhm.
so I understand what the limitations are of human hearing. So I think it's very possible that these things communicate with infrasound, and so frequencies. Um, as I was getting back to, I think frequency, as you were talking about with the singing bowls, because that's kind of what they're doing, is they're creating you're creating a specific frequency hum, as you would, how I would describe it anyway.
Yeah,
And
and
so
I also have a set of tuning forks that I take with me, so now you have more frequencies.
there you go. So I tend to think that frequency, and of course anybody that watches the Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch TV show knows that there's a certain frequency that's always popping up during their research and investigation. So I think frequency plays a role in a lot of this, including into consciousness and all kinds of things. So it's I find that whole CE5 thing that you're talking about very, very fascinating, and I'd like to know more about it.
It's you're just sky watching, but you're with a group of people. You kind of meditate for a few minutes, and then you just kind of sit there quietly and observe. But
Right
like
on.
I said, you got to be in a group of like-minded people, because one time we had just people join because they just wanted to go see a UFO, and and they wouldn't quit talking the whole time, and I was just so disappointed that night, because guess what? We didn't see anything because
That's
their energy was just totally off.
you got to have that focus, right? I mean, it's
They were there for entertainment. That we were there for research. It's not entertainment.
right.
You know, when I'm investigating at haunted locations, I'm not there for entertainment.
Yeah. Well, that's how Roger and I are. I mean, that's we have such a keen interest in it, and we approach everything with a healthy dose of skepticism,
Hmm.
but we both have open minds because we want to learn, we want to know, and more importantly, I mean, the whole reason why our podcast here exists is we want to destigmatize this whole term paranormal, because it still carries a stigma with a lot of people, and it's nice
Oh
to see.
yes.
Yeah, it's nice to see that at least within the UFO or UAP realm that stigma is starting to crumble, and I'm really happy to see that. But there's so much more out there that we don't understand that Roger and I believe is very real. You know, like indications of hauntings and apparitions and sightings. I mean, even Bigfoot. I mean, I think that there are cryptids out there, and science has taught us that just because something has been declared extinct for however long doesn't mean that there still isn't some straggling, surviving members of whatever species it might be, like the coelacanth that was discovered off the coast of Madagascar, what, 100 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, we're still discovering things in the ocean all the time, and in the jungle, we're always finding. They found that I forgot that little monkey that they found last year.
Right, right.
You know, there's things we don't know about, and they're still there. And I'm sure that Bigfoot, or whatever we want to call him, has been around forever. Maybe we're just getting out more into the unknown, and now we're approaching this and discovering it.
Well, that's an excellent point, and I would have to agree because just look at let's just use the recent UAP flap. We'll call it that. Okay, we're now just finding out that the United States government, they had their radars calibrated a certain way that it would only pick up certain kinds of objects, and now we're finding out that there's all kinds of things that are in our skies that are unidentified and that
Of
exhibit
course, yeah.
strange behavior. So um, I think we need to be paying a lot more attention, not just to our skies, but just kind of our environment that we tend to find ourselves in, because I think a lot more is going on. There's a lot that remains hidden, that's only hidden because we're not really looking for it, or we're not looking for it in the right way, or we're
Yeah.
not looking for it in the right places. What do you think about that?
I think everybody should quit looking at their phone and look around them, because there's things in the sky, there's things on the ground. It's all around us. Get off your phone.
Yeah.
And another thing I saw when I was driving to work, this was last year. I've actually seen it 3 times now. I'm driving to work, and I'm driving east. Now the sun is not up yet, and I look in the sky and I see like a bar of light. It didn't actually have a solid shape, but it was that kind of shape. And I said, okay, it's not the sun. What is it? And as I'm looking, it started rotating to the 3 o'clock position. Okay, sun doesn't do that. And I did get one picture of, again, I didn't think of doing video, but I only had my phone, so I didn't even get a great picture. I didn't want to be late for work. Trust me, if I ever see it again, I will stop. I don't care if I'm late where I'm going. And then it went back up to the 12 o'clock position and it just turned off. So then another time, I'm driving around the same area. I see it again. And then over on the other side of the road, another light bar appeared. And I said, okay, now I have two. So the one on the left side divided into two, which started rotating to the 3 o'clock position. After a few minutes, they all went back up to 12, and then all three of them just turned off. What the heck was that?
Wow.
And I've seen that 3 times now. What is it?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not, you can't say it's a craft. It was light.
right. Well, and we always hear, I mean, a lot of cultures define humans as being, we are creatures, we're beings of light,
Yeah,
and if you're
because we
somebody,
have auras. We all have auras. Yes.
I firmly believe that. And as someone who believes in life after death, I think that we kind of go back to that state of being a being of light.
Hmm.
Obviously, in this dimension where we're three-dimensional, we have bodies of flesh and blood, and I believe that when we pass this mortal existence, as it were, I believe that we go back to our status of being more of a yeah, a different
Where do,
kind of,
where do we where do we go?
yeah, a different kind of matter. And I think it's, you know in my particular religion, we believe in, there's a spirit world, that
Hmm.
this concept of heaven, um,
Hmm.
and we believe that they're very real, that just they exist in a different dimension, and that the
I
spirit
love
world,
that. I love that. Okay, because
yeah,
when I investigate, I always ask really strange questions. People look at me like I'm crazy. I said, well, why? We're here to ask questions to learn.
yeah, exactly,
And you'll say, well, you'll hear people say, well, when you hear a spirit's voice and it's very loud, it's because they're very strong, have a lot of energy, and the ones that are just a whisper, they don't have strong energy. And I said, well, what if one of them is in a dimension closer to us? That's why we can hear them better. And the other one's in a dimension farther away, and they think I'm nuts.
yeah,
Why could that not be?
yeah,
And when we see spirits, they're translucent.
right,
What if on the other side of this dimension, they're solid like we are, and when they see us, we look like the ghost?
yeah, very, very possible. And yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I think, we tend to believe, again, the my personal spiritual beliefs are that this quote unquote spirit world, or the spirit dimension, occupies the same space that we do. And
Exactly.
if we could peer into it, we would see something that wouldn't be too dissimilar to what they portray on Stranger Things. It'd be a mirror of our world. We'd recognize it. It'd be the same thing, except
Mhm.
we would see the disembodied, spirits or souls or essences, energies of our loved ones, and all the
Mhm.
people that are currently in that particular state of being or reality, whatever you want to call it. And so I think that using that term as another dimension is very accurate because it occupies the same space that we do. It's just in a dimension that we can't perceive with our natural senses. Although I believe that some people can. That's why you hear some people that are more sensitive to, spirits. Call them mediums, call them whatever you will. Um, I think quite obviously there's an awful lot of fraud and hoaxing that goes on there, but I do also
Oh
believe that
yeah, we won't
there's
go there.
yeah,
Okay.
and there's no shortage of people though that actually do possess that ability to sometimes actually see into it or to sense it. And I've seen things. I've seen departed loved ones, that have come to visit me. Usually in times where I need to be comforted, or when I'm
They do.
seeking
They know. They
seeking
know. They're
guidance.
here
And
to help us. Yes.
yeah, and I believe that they are constantly checking in on us and looking over us. And I believe very strongly in those kinds of things. So, can I scientifically prove it? Of course not, but I don't need to, because it's my belief. It's my, I have faith that belief in things that are not seen. I have the faith that it's really there. So that's just me though, and as
One,
typical, I
yeah,
talk too much.
one thing I like to do is when, somebody will say, do you have a message from me from someone on the other side? And I love giving them a message.
Yeah.
And, and I don't even know who this person is, and I will give them a message and they go, yes, that's them, so how do I know these things? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's absolutely fascinating. So let's talk about you've had some experiences with remote viewing. Tell us of your views on that, no pun intended, and just kind of tell us a little bit about your experiences with remote viewing.
Well, I'm part of a group called Project Psi, and we work on missing person cases, cold cases, look for mostly missing children.
Mhm. Right
And
on. And you
that's the best part, because when a child is missing, you only have 48 hours to bring them back home alive. That's all.
That's the statistic. Yep. That,
Yes.
that first
Yes.
48 hours is so crucial, isn't it?
Yes.
And
So
your work with the group, have you been successful in helping law enforcement and families in recovering within that 48 hours? Which been your experience?
many times we have. Yes. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
We'll apologize to our viewers. Roger's camera stopped working, but we do
Oh,
still have him here. Roger's camera has gone into another dimension, right, Raj?
It has. We were talking about paranormal stuff, and I'm still getting a live feed through my computer, and the camera's live, but it just won't show up. So it's
There we go.
strange.
El gato.
You have slipped away from us. Let's pull him back in.
Uh, so, Raj, do you want to just kind of tell Cheryl about your experience that you had in Denver that one time, or
Yeah,
you
yeah.
want to share that?
So speaking of dimensions and portals, this is an experience that I had back, I want to say 2016, 2017. And a coworker of mine and I flew out to Denver for a work trip. So we were visiting one of our vendors. And anyway, we fly into Denver. It's later in the evening. We pick up our rental car from the Denver airport. We had a GPS device with us, and we put in the coordinates for our hotel, which is in downtown Denver.
Bye-bye.
We're following this, right? And we're getting closer and closer. The sun starts going down, and anyway, we're not actually heading towards downtown Denver. We noticed that we're being taken someplace else, but we trusted in the GPS device, and we just followed it. And we get to where the GPS device said this hotel would be, but it wasn't there. We were inside an industrial zone, which was really strange. The sky was like filled with like this brilliant orange and yellow. And as we were trying to find get our senses and our bearings, we had turned down the streets in this industrial complex, and we saw these buildings that we didn't recognize, and it looked almost, I would say, like it's manufacturing district, but much like it would have been back early 1900s type of thing. And so we were really confused. I snapped a picture of it. The picture, I mean, camera was working fine, but the picture came out blurred. So you can still see things there. You can still see the colors. You can see what looks like a communications or telephone pole. But we were really confused. And so my friend and I, we reset the GPS, put the address back in, and started following that. And just kind of a weird feeling. And about after, I would say, 10 minutes of following the GPS again, almost like the sky changed. And we started seeing familiar stuff in the sky, our stars and everything. And it took us to downtown Denver. So the next day, because he and I were both really, really confused, and we took a look at the street that we were on. We pulled it up in Google Maps, and there is a street that was named the street that we saw, but it was in a residential zone. There was no industrial, there was no manufacturing. After we did our concluded our work business, we went back to recreate and go find that place. We were unable to find it. So it did not exist on Google Maps. It did not exist when we went back and retraced our steps. It was a residential zone. Nothing that we saw that night made sense, and we could not find that place. It does not exist. It is my feeling, in going back, and even because my friend jokes about it a lot, like, I don't know what happened, we got lost. But yeah, that place and that industrial zone does not exist as we know it on this earth. So I'm a firm believer that for whatever reason we crossed into something, a different dimension, a parallel universe, whatever you want to call it, but it was very real. And it was strange because our electronics weren't working. But once we got back to where we should be, then everything just went back to normal. So very, very strange experience.
Did you ever research to see if there was an industrial area there at one time?
I have, and I was not able to find any industrial area throughout the history. It's something to this day that I still can't explain what happened.
I firmly, I'm with you, Raj. I think one of the possible explanations, because it was not just you that experienced it. You had a coworker with you, and I think that makes sense, that there may have been some anomaly that may have occurred where you ended up in the same space but in a different place, if that makes any sense. So I for one tend to believe your account, but that's just me.
And I like when you have someone with you to experience, because then people don't tell you you're crazy because someone else saw it too.
Yeah, and we joke about it to this day, because we talk about it, the really strange experience, the place we visited that doesn't exist. And so and my friend who visited, very, very rational, down to earth guy, not somebody that believes in paranormal or any of the things or the subjects that we're talking about. And for him to experience that and think back about it, he's like, I can't explain what happened, but he was there, he saw it, we both saw it, we talked about it, we documented it, and tried to follow up on it and really get back to where we would, but we were unable to. It's something where I'd like to take Jimm and possibly a couple other people and go out and see if it's possible to recreate something like that, because it was
Raj, you forget I'm a Raiders fan. I'm banned from going into Denver.
You know what? It's all right. We'll just get you your Packer shirt and we'll be good.
Was your radio playing Must Have Got Lost by Jay Giles?
Oh, yeah, we didn't have a radio on, but that would have been great.
So a quick question about that, Raj. It just came to me as you were telling the story. How close were you in proximity to the Denver airport?
I'd say we're probably a good 15 miles from it, maybe a little bit further.
I only say that because there's all kinds of stories of bizarre things associated with the Denver airport, like the massive tunnel system that was allegedly created under the airport, that funky mural, which I don't know if it's still there, but really kind of a bizarre looking mural that was in one of the most high traffic foot traffic areas in one of the terminals. So there's some pretty strange stuff going on in Denver.
And for any of our viewers out there that want to take a look into this and even help investigate it, the name of the street where was the dead end, and we were in the industrial zone, and we saw like the industrial buildings, and we saw like the work lights and kind of the fires and things like that. The name of the street is Elgin Street, Elgin, and that does pull up on Google Maps, but it's a complete residential zone. There's no industrial. And when we were there, my friend and I, there were no homes. This was 100% a manufacturing industrial district. It seemed off. Maybe on one of our live, when we do something live or on our Facebook page, I can post a picture of what we had there and see what people think about it. But definitely a very strange event, and I feel like we were not where we were supposed to be. Crossed over somehow, and then we're able to get back and move along. So
Yeah, I'd like to see that photo because I can read photos. I like to see that.
yeah, I'll get that and send it to you.
So speaking of photos that Raj has and other experiences, um, what when was the thing that you experienced with Tyler, Raj? How many? That was after Phenomicon, right? Or no, it was before
It was
Phenomicon.
before Phenomicon. It was last August.
Right.
Um,
So Cheryl, Roger and his son, last August before Phenomicon, they went outdoors at nighttime where they live here in Utah, and Roger and his sons saw and recorded on video this really bizarre luminous phenomenon, is the best way to describe it. And the really creepy thing about it, when we were at Phenomicon, Roger and I got there a day early, and we went to the Phenomicon Film Festival. And this was on what, Wednesday night, Raj, the very first night.
yes.
And on the first night of the film festival is when they showed Russ Acord's tribute to Bob Gimlin, and then there was another video film that was debuted called Aliens in the Rocky Mountains, or something like Alien Encounter in the Rocky Mountains, right? Yeah. So, but there was a segment in that film that was identical to what Roger and his son saw, only it was in the daytime in what was portrayed in this film at the film festival, versus what Roger and his son saw was at nighttime. But spot on identical, wasn't it, Raj?
It was again self-illuminating orbs that actually had some type of, it seemed like intelligence to them. They were making movements that just weren't normal. I'll have to send you that video too. I took a couple. This was later at night, and I did some research on it because a lot of people have said those are just birds, and you're getting hit with lights. The interesting thing about the video and what we saw is that it was not a reflective surface. They were not birds. They were not like, they didn't act like birds, other than the fact that when you see a large group of birds, they may, like, as they're flying, they can do different formations and kind of ebbs and flows. I checked the Utah migratory birds that we have, and the birds that we have here, they don't reflect light. Very few birds do. And the other interesting thing is that these orbs, or the things that we saw, would actually come in, like they just appeared in the sky, and then they would come, and then they were going around, and I'd follow them with the camera, and then they would just disappear.
That's not birds, no.
Yeah, right. And I tried to recreate it like the next night and the night following, and nothing happened like that. Now, if they were migratory birds that were being reflected, then obviously we would still see that. But even like approaching dusk and things like that, I've looked at different birds that fly over, and they're not illuminated in that way. And there's just not enough light to actually create the brilliance that we saw. And so something that's really, really strange that I can't explain, but we did have it on video. And again, when we saw that film, and they showed something that a gentleman had filmed in the day, it was exactly the same thing, same behavior. So we did talk to that gentleman and his son, and shared our video with him. But it's interesting because I'm glad that we actually saw that, because it validates what happened to me and my son and what we saw. And then somebody else in a completely different state, completely different situation, this was in the day, had the same thing happen to it. It was just amazing.
And you heard no sound, right? Because birds you're gonna have a sound with birds.
Right. Yeah, there was no sound. These were quiet. And yeah, there was just, I mean, Jim can tell you, they're self-illuminated, they phase in, they're doing their thing, and then as I'm watching with the camera, they just like disappear. And then I pan the camera back and they just, another, like I would say, group just appears and then disappear.
It was wave after wave for you said what you estimated to be about a good 8 to 10 minutes, right, Raj? It wasn't just, one instance. They were coming almost in wave after wave, and they would come in, and then it was like he just said, they were phasing, in and out of the sky. It was almost like they were. I mean, we were talking about portals a moment ago. You know, whatever it was, maybe that's what it was. Is it was going from one portal momentarily into our world, and then into, another portal, or in some other way, just completely disappearing. But the
Or they're
video,
going so fast, or they were going so fast.
right? I mean, it's a really impressive video. We actually showed it, one of the clips, to Eric Bard while we were at Phenomicon, and even he was like, "Wow, that's really interesting." Um, and so Roger has been trying to spend the last couple of months doing more research and trying to, eliminate all of the possible mundane explanations, and see if we can get
You're
our
back,
hand.
Roger.
There he is. Roger emerges from his portal. There we go.
He just came back. That's really crazy. That's so strange.
But Roger's trying to get the we're trying to find some kind of software out there that maybe we can run it through for one more level of verification that this really isn't birds, it's not fireworks. Because with fireworks there would be smoke, there would be sound, there'd be a report of some kind from, like if they were Roman candles. But
On fireworks would have like an explosion.
right,
Roman candles have a tail.
yeah, exactly. And there was none of that. In fact, I mean, I'll leave it up to you, Raj, but it's something I think you, especially being a member of MUFON, you might find interesting or compelling. So
Yeah, I'll have to, yeah, I'll send you the that picture as well as the video here today. So I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
yeah, definitely. So let's dive into Skinwalker Ranch a little bit now. We talked about it briefly a few moments ago, but how did how did you become aware of Skinwalker Ranch, and how did the actual writing of the Basin Files come about?
Well, I guess Beck would hunt with the Skinwalker back there,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Ryan asked me if I would help him write some books, and so that's what we started doing, 2 books. That was the Basin Files was the second one. The first one we did was digging into Skinwalker Ranch, which is I wanted to know the history. Who were all the people that lived there?
Right.
The people that you always hear about are the Shermans. There were so many more families before that
Right.
lived on this land.
Right.
Who were they? I've got all the land deeds from the office in Vernal. It's so cool looking at the land deeds and their signatures. And I found pictures of them and how many family members they had and what jobs they had. They're just regular people like us
Right.
who came to this place looking for something, I don't know, looking for a dream,
Right.
and perhaps discovered a nightmare.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with this is, let's just dispel this rumor and this belief right now that paranormal stuff only started happening when the Shermans were on the ranch, because that's categorically not true. And
No,
anybody who does any modicum of research will know that the Myers family experienced things, and it goes back at least, well, now we can say it's gone back, at least 100 years that we know about. And if you want to get into the actual bizarre, unexplained phenomena that occurs in the basin, that goes back clear to the 1700s. there's
right,
there's accounts when Father Escalante came through the area as a Spanish missionary, and they were seeing bizarre, strange phenomena in the skies. So, this notion that everything was fabricated either for the TV show or uh, to help, sell a book, is patently false. The
right.
stuff has been going on there for a long time, and a wide ranging array of quote unquote stuff, So that's one of the reasons why I find the research of Junior Hicks to be so vital, and the work that you and Ryan have done on the various books that you guys have written about Skinwalker Ranch. And that's really kind of where I stand. Is I won't even begin to say what I believe is out there, but I have some theories, but whatever it is, it's very real. It definitely exists. And I find it interesting that, particularly when you read the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book that came out 2 years ago, um, I find it interesting that even Travis Taylor is now saying that, some of the accounts, the guy that's mentioned in that book that goes by the name of Axelrod, we now know was Jay Stratton, who was a very high-ranking official at the Pentagon in the intelligence program, and if I'm not mistaken, at one time was also Lou Elizondo's boss. So we now know that this guy that had this strange cryptid that didn't appear to him while he was on the ranch, but that this hitchhiker effect that they talk about so much, this hitchhiker effect, this bizarre wolf creature that can all of a sudden go from walking on all fours like a wolf does, but then stand on two legs like a human, and stand there and cross its front paws like a human. It's a very menacing, scary looking thing that appeared to Jay Stratton's wife, and she has since come forward and stood by her testimony publicly. And it appeared to his children, it appeared to their neighbors. And so it's really, again, there's so many layers to this Skinwalker Ranch mystery. And that's why I find it so interesting, because it's a little bit of everything. There's classic trickster slash poltergeist phenomena that is alleged to take place out there. There is obviously the UAP UFO sightings. There's the reportings of skinwalkers, the Native American legend of skinwalkers. And so, I mean, how can anybody not be interested in a place that is habitually breaking reality, right?
Yeah. Well, I remote viewed there when I was writing the first book. I wanted to do a remote view to the ranch to see what I would see.
Right.
And that's exactly. I saw, yes, there's spirits there from natives that lived there, from people that had lived on the land. And I saw things in the sky. I saw things underground in the cave systems. Like we're talking about before, two dimensions. I see two dimensions that keep bumping into each other. There's elementals there. There's Bigfoot. There's all kinds of things that I saw.
Yeah. It's literally a melting pot of
Hmm.
the paranormal, I guess is a way we could
Yeah.
describe it. And while the team that's there right now, who I absolutely adore, by the way, and Roger and I, that's one of the things we've loved about Phenomicon, is the opportunity to get to meet this amazing Skinwalker Ranch team in person and get to talk to them face to face. And Roger and I have become friends with Caleb, and you realize that these guys are really there experiencing these things, and they're every bit as mystified
Exactly.
as we are, but they are being as transparent as they're able to be. And this great thing that got started last year, the Skinwalker Ranch Insider membership, is one of the greatest things that I've been a part of, and I'm so proud to be a member of that. And you're one of the moderators for the Insider, aren't you? Or is the
No,
other? It's the
no,
other the
the
other one.
groups, the
Ah,
groups.
that's right. But but it's like I've in talking to Travis Taylor and to Eric and to Tom and Caleb, um, they themselves haven't mentioned any sightings of some of the cryptids, like Bigfoot or anything like that. But you know, they've been able to verify that a lot of these things that we see on the TV show is just one tiny minuscule glimpse of to what they experience on a fairly frequent basis. I mean, clearly there's days where nothing at all goes on, where
Sure.
no strange things happen, but um, there's also been some rumors out there that the activity has started to die down, and anybody who watches the the webcams there, 24-hour webcams that the insiders get access to. There's strange stuff in the sky all the time appearing there, and it's just great to.
Well, I said, and people aren't looking on the ground. There's things on the ground.
Yeah.
And the place where Bigfoot was being found is up on by Skinwalker Ridge. That's where it's up there.
Yeah.
Because I have a friend who he is a Bigfoot researcher, and he went out there a couple years ago, and he has cast of footprints up on the ridge.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't doubt it one bit. And one of the really cool things that Roger and I got to do last year at Phenomicon is we took the trip out to McConkey Ranch to see the petroglyphs. And I don't know
Yes, I went out there too. Yeah.
I mean, just absolutely blew my mind. I mean, first of all, it's such a beautiful setting, right up there, going through the canyon. There is just so beautiful and picturesque. But you then begin to realize that there's a whole culture that has existed out there in that area that are clearly depicting things like Bigfoot, like giants, for want of a better word,
Mm-hmm.
and portals and all kinds of
Portals,
things.
yes.
So clearly there's a record of it, of these strange occurrences, and maybe to the ancients they weren't so strange because they just, that was the world that they lived in. And so I find little things like that to be really 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 cool. you know um but it's the whole area there, the whole Uinta Basin is just such a different energy. And I've heard stories, and I have family that live in Arizona, and of all the times that I've been to Arizona, I've still never been to Sedona. But I've
Oh,
heard of
you must go. You
that.
must go there.
My wife and I, that's like number one on our places to go when we go on vacation next time. But I'm told that there is just this real unique energy that exists in Sedona.
There
And
is. You feel so happy when you go there.
that's
I
what I'm
can't even
told.
explain. I can't even explain the feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I hear. And there's a, just as there's an energy there, and it may be a different kind of energy, but there's definitely, when you're in the Uinta Basin, and this was long before the Skinwalker Ranch TV show was in existence, long before George Knapp or Jeremy Corbell's Hunt for the Skinwalker documentary came out, where you're there. I was out there in the basin, and Roger can confirm this. When you're there, there's just a different energy there than there is in the rest of Utah. And why that is, we can speculate all day, but it's just really a very unique place, more unique than any place I've ever been in the world. And
Well,
that's
have you been to Canyonlands and Arches?
believe it or not, that's one of the few places in Utah I have not been.
No, there's some really great places. It's in Moab. There's a lot of nice things there, and that's got a special energy too.
I've been told that as well.
Yeah,
And
I've been there. I've been to Moab many times. It's a great, just little town, but so many things around it. Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about when we were preparing for this interview, you and I had talked briefly about how you had the occasion to go to Wright-Patterson Airfield to do some research
Not
for.
yet. Not
Oh,
yet. Next
you
week.
havenent. Oh,
Next week.
got ahead
I'm
of
going
myself
next week.
there.
That's okay.
But
Next week I'm going. Yeah.
you told me about this really cool thing about we were talking about the Serpent Mound, and about the ancient cultures that inhabited the United States. We're talking long before European settlers were here.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm going to Serpent Mound for the spring solstice. That's when, or
that's so cool.
spring equinox, not solstice,
That's
equinox.
right. And you mentioned to me that, and now of course, for those of you that don't know, there are all of these what are called burial mounds scattered throughout the Midwest, particularly in Ohio, and I think Raj, where's the Hopewell? Isn't that Ohio?
Yes.
Yeah, throughout Ohio there, and
We have
like
mounds in Illinois too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all throughout the Midwest there, and these are from a. The thing is they don't belong to any of the uh, recognized Native American tribes. They're not Ojibwe. They're not Algonquin. They're not Iroquois. You know, whatever the Indian tribes that were indigenous to the area there. These particular mounds were built by a culture that predates them, and they're
Some are also made by the Adinas.
right, right, the Adena culture. So I found it really interesting when you mentioned to me that there was actually a mound on the property for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
5 mounds.
That is extraordinary. Can you
Five
can you talk to us
mounds.
a little bit about that?
I have not seen them. That is one of my highlights going to Wright-Patterson. There's supposed to be a monument for the Wright brothers. And you go down this path and you can't get to the mounds. I see there's a fence there, but I just want to be able to stand next to them and
Right.
see what I feel. But yeah, they have preserved them. You know, some places they, just bulldoze the mounds and build, and Wright-Patterson didn't do that.
Oh, well, I'm happy to hear they didn't do that.
Yeah.
That's always frustrating because when I here's an interesting aside here. When I was growing up in New York, in seventh grade is when they make you study New York State history. And I had a teacher who, when he wasn't teaching, was a Baptist minister. And he was telling me about how when the early settlers were going into Western New York, this would be the area out by Rochester and Buffalo, really Canandaigua. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful countryside, lots of farming, lots of dairy farms. But he said that when the early settlers came into the area and they were plowing up their fields, they were plowing up really items that should not have been there. Specifically, he mentioned that the plows were digging up what looked to be helmets, like metal, crafted metal helmets of some kind, as well
Hmm.
as uh, shields and knives that looked like they could be swords, like the kind of things that you would see from ancient, like Roman or Egyptian times, kind of type thing. And what happened is these farmers would uncover it and they would just simply destroy it. They wouldn't keep it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't send it to a museum, which is what you would think to do nowadays, most people. So it kind of makes you wonder how many cultures were actually here. And Roger and I have talked about this ad nauseum, but you know think of all of the ancient cultures that were seafaring cultures. You had the Phoenicians, for one. You had the Chinese, the Romans. I mean, the Vikings. You had all of these ancient cultures that we do have a record of and that we do know about. And who's to say that maybe when they were out sailing, one day they got blown off course and they ended up here on this continent. And that's why I don't think it's impossible to hold open the possibility that some of these ancient cultures actually got here long before Columbus got here.
Of
And
course.
in
Yeah.
fact, there's really good record and evidence to support the belief that the Vikings may have, or Norse travelers of some kind
Hmm.
made it as far inland as the Great Lakes, into Minnesota and Wisconsin. Um,
Hmm.
and Michigan as well. And there's been some really fascinating uh, discoveries of artifacts that don't, that according to modern history, as it's taught in academia, be should not exist, but yet they're being found in places like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, um, even in Illinois and Ohio. Some of these burial mounds, there's things that they're seeing that don't seem to be derivative of any of the known indigenous Native American cultures. And that's another area that interests Roger and I quite a bit.
Well, if you go to Southern Illinois, there's I guess a civilization.
Mhm.
It's a whole city that it's called Cahokia Mounds.
Right.
And at one time there were 400 mounds there. And like you said, the farmers came through, they just plowed the things down. But it's become a national park now. And it's another amazing place for energy. It's just, and you start driving into town and you still see mounds in people's backyards, or I remember there was one behind a gas station. They're still everywhere. So I don't know how far this city ever was spread out, but it's just great. And they don't know what happened to the people. They just all disappeared one day.
Yeah, and that's what I find interesting is that there's there's no explanation as to what happened to them. Was there a great war? Was there a conflict? Was there, I mean, it's just one of those mysteries, did they where did they go?
They're just a highly advanced civilization too.
Yeah.
And the one mound, it's the biggest, tallest one there. It's called Monk's Mound, and it's as big as a 4-story building.
Oh wow.
And
Wow.
there's steps you can walk up to the top, and I go, I don't know if I can do this, but I did it. I forgot 367 steps or something like that. And when you get up to the top, everything below you looks really small. Like there was a car driving by and it looked like an ant. That's how high up I was.
Oh wow.
And there's a big vortex going down the middle of this mound. You can feel
Really?
it swirling, swirling. Yeah.
Wow. So possible gravitic anomaly going on there?
Well, it's a burial mound. There are
Yeah.
something buried, but what the vortex is, I don't know. And when you look over to your left, you can see the St. Louis Arch over in the other,
Oh, nice.
over in Missouri there. That's how high up you are.
Wow. That is amazing. I had no idea that one was there. I knew about the Hopewell display that's there. I knew about Serpent Mound. Um, but that's cool. I'll have to look into that. That's
I mean,
awesome.
I grew up in Illinois and I didn't know it was there. I'm so mad. I could have been there so many times.
Yeah,
I didn't know until I was researching for my book, and I go, really? I have to go back and see this place.
yeah, I have a firm belief, and I think Roger does too, that our history as we're taught it is so incomplete, and I don't understand why there's such a backlash whenever there's research being done, and people are finding evidence of cultures that were far more advanced
Hmm.
than, or that there were cultures here that predated the known indigenous Native American culture and tribes. I mean, I don't understand. You would think that they would want to put more investment into getting to the bottom of what these are,
Mhm.
and so many times they're just simply dismissed as being, oh well, anytime an artifact is found, it was placed there. It's a hoax, or somebody went, on a field trip to Europe, and they brought something back with them, 100, 200 years ago, and it just got misplaced and lost and buried. And it's like, well,
Not when you're finding 10, 20, 30 artifacts in an area. Those were not
and
placed there.
and not when they're buried beneath, sediment layers that indicate that it's several thousand years ago.
Right, right.
Right? I mean, and it was
Right.
previous, because they can tell things like when something has been disturbed and when it was just simply, for
Mhm.
whatever reason, covered over. And a lot of times, coming from the Midwest, that floods can be a fairly common thing there that can,
Exactly.
do all kinds of things like that. So I've never understood why there's this, wall that just seems to be put up by anybody that's a credentialed academic in the field of archaeology or anthropology that just says, nope, can't be possible. Nope. And it's like, and then Travis Taylor and I were having this conversation at Phenomicon this last year, where this term that a lot of scientists like to say, which is, oh, that's settled science. And it's like, what a stupid term. I mean, how can you call yourself a scientist if you are using an approach like that, where you're saying, we know all that there is to know, there's not going to be anything new, it's settled science? I mean, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. I mean, what an
Yeah.
asinine thing to say. But yet there's a lot
This
of
isn't
people.
even science. This is history.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
science. It's history. It's real.
Exactly. And what is there to really gain by suppressing or putting a little more stock into some of these investigations that are really truly uncovering quite literally a lot of really fascinating data and a lot of fascinating evidence. I just don't get it. I don't get why some of these things that are being found are not showing up on, you know, national news. And in some cases they are. There are
Mm.
some finds that are big enough and substantial enough that are generating stories, but they're usually in the small bylines of, you
Yeah,
know,
on the back page somewhere.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, because
So
I've been doing, I'm writing two books right now, but the one book that I'm writing, it is about ancient places.
cool.
And I think I'm going to call it Messages from the Ancient Ones. And it's places like Cahokia Mounds, Chaco Canyon, Serpent Mound. And something that all these places have in common is that they have ties to Pleiades.
Really?
Yes. So should we not pay attention to this?
Yeah.
What is this telling us? What did all these ancients know that was so important that we know about Pleiades?
Right.
Did someone come there and help us learn things? Are they coming back?
Yeah. All excellent questions, which I think are meritorious of receiving more attention. I really do. And particularly, you mentioned Chaco Canyon. That's another one that's always I found that to be really fascinating. And
Mhm,
the Anasazi, right?
mhm.
They've Anasazi, Anunnaki. I mean, whatever
Anasazi.
civilization. Yeah, you want to. I mean, they're all a mystery, but yet they all seem to be really in tune with events happening in the sky or with astronomical precision, the way they would, do things. And I think that a lot of these ancient cultures were a lot more advanced than we give them credit for, and then there's, I mean, I've got to give a mention to that controversial Netflix show, Ancient Apocalypse. I mean, the work that Graham Hancock is doing, I cannot get over how many academics are just vicious to him when he's really truly putting up some evidence that they should be taking a greater look at. And instead,
They won't let him come back to Serpent Mound.
right?
He's been banned from Serpent Mound.
And I don't get it. I do not get it.
That's
What are,
strange.
I mean, what do they have to hide? That's the question that I have is, okay, why? I mean, okay, if the guy was, engaging in lewd behavior or something like that, I'm,
Yeah.
trying to perform a virgin sacrifice or something like that.
Well,
Maybe I
they
can
they
understand
didn't
why,
like
but
that he was they didn't like that he was filming there because now it's become like a national park area.
right.
So now that's who you're dealing with, the national park.
Ah,
But I
well,
I go there and I film too. So what? I
right.
film there all the time when I go.
Why wouldn't somebody want to go there that's interested in it and not film things? I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I see people film there all the time. Well, we're not known names, so.
right. Well, that's awesome. You've really got a really wide ranging interest in a lot of the same fields that Roger and I are also very passionate about. It's always a pleasure to come across somebody who shares that interest and that passion for all things unexplained.
Yeah, I
And
don't think you should have tunnel vision and just say, I only like this one thing, because you're missing out on so much more around you.
right. And who's to say that a lot of these things aren't interconnected? There might
I
be
was
a
just going to
common.
say they all are as my new book is going to show, they are all interconnected.
I really believe that.
Yes.
The more Roger and I learn about this wide ranging topic of the paranormal, and the more that we're exposed to, the more Roger and I say, "Hey, that connects with this and this," and we're talking completely different realms. The whole UFO and Bigfoot thing and giants. I mean, all this stuff is like. And the thing is 5-10 years ago, I just had kind of like a casual interest in this, and what really kind of springboarded me into really taking notice, I have to be honest, was that 2017 article in the New York Times about the Pentagon admitting that they still had an active UFO investigation program, and and then seeing those three videos, the gimbal, the go fast, and the tic tac. I mean, that just immediately shifted the paradigm, as so many people are popular for saying, and it's just really that was kind of the moment where I'm like, all right, you know, I think,
John F. Kennedy always said we had a program. Of course we did.
yeah, yeah.
That's why
Well,
he had to be hushed up, but that's another story.
exactly. And I've really been wanting to get my hands on some of those recently declassified JFK assassination files, because that's
The
always been.
Black Vault has them. Check the Black Vault.
Oh yeah, okay, cool, right on. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you is, what of all of these topics that we've discussed today, of all the interest that you have in the paranormal, where do you think is going to be like the next big real breakthrough or development in any of this? Do you think it's going to be Skinwalker Ranch, or Wilson Mountain is apparently is a place that's now come into the consciousness of being a really interesting place? Where do you think the next big reveal or breakthrough is going to happen?
I'm not sure. There's just been a lot about cryptids lately that I have noticed, at least in my area, that we are all really investigating this and wanting to learn more about it.
Right. Well, and I have to give a special shout out to and speaking of cryptids, um, Expedition Bigfoot. I
I
was
love
never
that show.
right, and I cannot wait for the new season. And it sounds like we're going to get the season 4 of Skinwalker Ranch and Expedition Bigfoot very close to each other. So,
Hmm.
um, but I was always kind of like Jeff Freeman says, I was always kind of on the fence when it came to Bigfoot. I never discounted the possibility that it was real. It was just never really something I spent a lot of time thinking about. Of all the famous cryptids, I thought that there was probably a greater likelihood of Bigfoot being real and legitimate than, say, the Loch Ness monster, or Mokele and Mbembe, the last living dinosaur that is rumored to exist in the Congo. Um, so I started watching Expedition Bigfoot, and I'd seen so many of these, and maybe you're the same way, but there are so many paranormal themed TV shows that are out there, and so many of them are just about sensationalizing and for entertainment, like you were
I quit
talking about.
watching them all. Yeah, when I saw how people were making things up, I quit watching.
Right. Because I mean, stuff like that is interesting to me, but not when they make it a farce, because it takes
Mhm.
the whole legitimacy, and there are real experts. There are people out there that are doing legitimate scientific investigation, like Dr. Maria Mayor and, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and then Travis Taylor and the Skinwalker Ranch team that are doing, scientific method investigations and are following where the data leads them. But then you come across some of these shows that are just like so clearly scripted and so ridiculous. But I came across Expedition Bigfoot, and I'd been hearing from some people, hey, you got to watch Expedition Bigfoot. It's like the best one, the legitimate one. And I was kind of grudgingly like, well,
Mhm.
okay, and that was because they had announced that last year's Phenomenon was going to be focusing really heavily on Bigfoot and Sasquatch investigations. So I'm like, well, the Expedition Bigfoot team is going to be there, so I guess I better watch, a little bit of the show. And oh my gosh, it completely
I was hooked on the
com-
first episode. I was.
I still get chills when I think about episode 3 or season 3, episode 3, when Maria and Ronnie experience that shadow. And it's like, even Maria and Roger and I got to talk with Maria at Phenomicon, and she was like, we still don't know. I mean, she's like, that it just chills. It's like,
Mhm.
it's so cool because Dr. Maria Mayor is one of the most respected primatologists
Yeah,
in
and
the
she's
world.
seen everything, and she goes, "What
Right.
was that?" Yeah.
I mean, she's like become one of my heroes now, and it's just like, I just love the fact that the right people, I think, are finally really in place to really move the whole field forward,
Right.
and particularly there with Expedition Bigfoot. And um, I'm kind of wondering if maybe all of the things that are now starting to happen with greater frequency isn't by some design. Maybe in these uh, you hear so many religions talk about, well, these are the last days, and maybe this is when all these amazing miracles and things are supposed to start happening, that that
Right.
really
This is
do.
the time of the seventh fire. Yes.
Right, exactly. It's like, if you're a Christian, then you believe that, Christ is going to come back someday, but all these amazing and horrible, but also amazing things are supposed to be happening at the same time. And so I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of these, fantastical things coming into the public consciousness, like more UAPs. I mean, just this morning, I was reading something. The Pentagon are now talking, and these are actual Pentagon officials that are there now that are giving public briefings about UFO motherships. I mean, when, you know, 5, 10 years ago, that would have been
A
no
joke.
way,
Yeah.
no
Yeah. It would have
way,
been a joke. Yeah.
you
Mothership. Right.
know,
I know.
and now it's like, okay, it's almost like they're inching us toward, we hear this term disclosure, and I don't know who it was that said it, but it's one of the more prominent longtime UFO guys that said disclosure has already happened.
Of course.
Disclosure is not a one single event like the big, stereotypical UFO landing on the front lawn of the White House. Disclosure has already happened in the sense that the Pentagon admitted, yes, they're real. We don't know what they are, although I do think some of them do.
Hmm.
Um, but now this great podcast has been started by Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp called Weaponized, where they are now starting to show and reveal the names of the people who have been their sources, and it's 100% verifiable. And I mean, it's just blowing my mind. And I think, like one of the hot topics for me that I'm really following closely is these legacy UFO programs. And now that the NDA, the UFO amnesty, I guess is what a lot of people call it, was authorized and passed into law by President Biden last year, where it gives the mechanism where people can come forward as whistleblowers or whatever you want to call their testimony, and they can testify before Congress. And from what I'm hearing from some very reliable sources is that these people are now coming forward with the information about programs like Roswell and Kecksburg and Gulf Breeze, all these really famous UFO incidents, and now are providing information to members of Congress that these things really did happen and that the government clearly covered it up. But then the question is going to become, okay, what happens if we finally get the real truth on Roswell or Kecksburg or whatever, and we find out that yes, these are craft that came from either another dimension or from another planet, extraterrestrial, and our government purposely covered it up, but not just covered it up, but they lied about it. And let's not forget, there are people whose lives and careers were destroyed by the
Hmm.
government. There are stories of people that were permanently silenced, meaning that you know, they
They
were whacked.
disappeared.
They
They just
disappeared.
disappeared. Yes, they did.
Yes, and so what's going to happen when that information comes out? Are we going to then, as Lou Elizondo says, are we going to be trying to extract a pound of flesh from the people that perpetuated this and that enabled that to happen? Or are we going to grant amnesty because the greater good would be for them to finally be able to feel like like basically grant them immunity, I guess is what I'm saying, to where you tell us everything we know, and the condition of doing so is that we won't prosecute you for this, and this.
Well,
And
and to stop all the misinformation that people have gathered and say, no, this is how it is.
right.
There's so much misinformation out there.
There really is. And, I mean, I think Lou Elizondo is the one that came up with the quote that said, if he could, just unplug UFO Twitter and restart it. I mean, there's a great example. Now, Twitter has always been a haven for just like the worst behavior of humanity. I mean,
Lately, it has been. I've been watching the last few days.
even but before Elon Musk took it over, and I mean, there's still, take your pick. There's extremists. There's people that are, love the anonymity, the relative anonymity that Twitter and the internet affords them, with people saying things that they wouldn't have the guts to say to your face,
Mm.
but you're right. There is so much disinformation and misinformation that is out there, and I'm hoping that the momentum that's going right now with all the stuff that's coming out. I think it's like the proverbial thing of toothpaste. Once it's out of the tube, it's not going back in, and I think that's where we're at now, and I think that's a good thing for everybody. And I'm hoping that that's where the next big the next big breakthrough or revelation moment comes when we find out, are we going to really get to the bottom of, have we been visited by another extraterrestrial civilization, or has there been a secret race of beings that's always been present on this planet, maybe the original inhabitants of this planet, that
Yes, and yes. I mean, it's many things.
I think it's exactly. I think it's, but any one of these things is going to break people's reality, and then the question becomes: is once we get that information, how are some people going to respond to it? And me personally, I think that you can gauge you can gauge what's going to happen when that day comes by what the reaction was when the New York Times article came out. Um, it was on all the major news outlets for exactly 1 or 2 days, and then most people were like, "Okay, UFOs are real. All right, great, but
Yeah, right.
why am I now paying $7 for a carton of eggs?" So I think most people are going to accept it as like, "Oh well, now we finally know. Thanks for telling us what we've known all along." I don't think there's going to be quite necessarily that big breakdown in society that people are worried about. Maybe among certain sectors. I mean, and I hate to paint it this way because I don't have any issue with evangelical Christians or anything like that, but these people that only see everything in the term of, well, it can only be demons or devils or satanic. Um, is that possible? I have to say, sure. But do I think that's the likely explanation? No, I don't.
But, I mean,
Um,
those things, we know those things are on Earth. Those are not extraterrestrial. Those things are part of Earth.
exactly.
They've always been here. So that this is, extraterrestrial or not demons.
Yeah.
Even though I was at a MUFON meeting one time, and I was selling some of my books, and this man came up that he's dressed kind of shabbily, and we could have guests just come into the meetings, and he walks up to the table and he picks my book up and he goes, "Oh, what's this about?" And I said, "Well, I communicate with spirits," and he dropped that book on the table like it was hot, and he said, "Do you know who you're speaking to?" And I said, "Yeah, spirits." He goes, "You're speaking to the devil." And he was really loud. The whole room could hear it. And I go, "Okay, I'm going to crawl under the table." But everybody was just laughing. But
Yeah.
yeah, that happens.
Well, and I'm going to be respectful to people that are like that because they're entitled to their view. But where I take an issue though is when they then start becoming accusatory and saying, "Well, you're a bad person or you're an evil person for dabbling in things you shouldn't know." And it's like, well, that's basically what science is. Science is dabbling into the unknown to try to figure shit out, right?
And
And
what was he doing at a MUFON event then? I don't understand.
right, are you going there purposely to stir shit up? I mean, why? What kind of a miserable life do you lead to feel that you have to
It was
just
just a weird thing. That's the only thing he said all day, and I just kept going, Why me?"
yeah,
Well, the one thing I'm going to say about that too is that
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize, like, if you gave him that situation, right, and like, hey, do you use a cell phone? Do you drive a car? Do you use modern day transportation? If I were to send you back with those things that you can do, starting a fire, like having a lighter or whatever, and you went back 500 years, right?
Uh,
People would be accusing you of the same thing that you just accused Cheryl of, right? They're
yeah.
like, oh my
I
gosh, that's
didn't want to get into a conversation with him. I just wanted him to stop talking.
yeah, yeah,
yeah. It's just interesting because when it comes to religion and thing, people get narrow-minded, and you have to be open because I mean that's what happened. Like the religious persecution back in the Middle Ages and things, and it really a lot of stuff that happened, and we know now was just science. And it can be really easy for people to get hung up on, these concepts that they're like, that's not science, you're dealing with the devil or things like that. And it's just a lack of understanding, and people need to be open to more experimentation and scientific things to expand our knowledge, right? And I think that that's something that's key to stay that as a civilization. I think we're getting better at, but we still
I
have a
do
long
too.
way to go.
Yeah. I mean, look what happened to Salem all those years ago, right? That's
Oh, that's
that's a
horrible.
prime example. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure we can talk all day about, the impact, both positive and negative, that religion has had on mankind. But, and just to clarify for all of our viewers out there, I'm not discounting the fact that some of the things like what goes on at Skinwalker Ranch, there may be demonic aspects to it. We just don't know. But we should also not just simply look at that as the only possible explanation. We have to be open-minded about everything when it comes to the paranormal, and just simply ascribing the explanation that, oh well, it's demons, or it's malicious and malevolent entities. Sure, there may be some evidence of that for some of the things, but not in every case. Not, I mean, and I guess it comes back to the old adage of, if you're going to go looking for monsters under your bed, if you're going to go looking for negative things, you're going to find them. If you go to look for things with an open mind, you may be pleasantly surprised by what you find. True, you may also be horrified by what you find, but at least you have the knowledge, at least you gain truth. And isn't that what we should all be in the pursuit of, is the pursuit of truth?
Right. And
Because
when I'm investigating, and we go someplace, and there's always one spot at the location that feels real dark and heavy.
yeah,
And that's I said, tell me where that is, because that's where I want to go, because there's nothing evil there. I'll go there and I'll find out that the spirit is just real sad, or they have a story they want to tell and no one will listen, and that's the energy you're feeling. It's not a demon, that like the people say that.
yeah, yeah.
So you gotta quit throwing that word around.
Well, and what troubles me is what Travis Taylor told us at Phenomenon about how at the Pentagon there is this group of Pentagon officials. These are high-ranking military guys that call themselves, what was it, Raj, the Christian Army or something like that,
I
that
think so.
that have purposely been trying uh, to submarine the whole ATIP and OSAP and all that stuff, because they're afraid that it's going to, that there's actually a demonic, malevolent, that it's all deception, that it's all this master, you know, uh, deception plan done by Satan kind of type thing.
Jeez.
And my initial reaction to that is to scoff at it, but I also have to take it with a grain of salt and say, well, you know what, I can't completely dismiss it, because if the shoe were on the other foot, you know, I wouldn't want people to tell me that I'm foolish and that I'm stupid, and being a New Yorker, that's always going to be my first reaction is, you guys are nuts. But, that's why, for our viewers or our listeners that do hold those views, you still have yeah, Roger and I are not going to say you guys are nuts or crazy, because you're entitled to think that way. But I guess my question to the people that feel that is, what are you afraid of? What
Right.
if it turns out to not be demons, and what if it turns out that there really is a civilization that's always been here among us on planet Earth, that have a greater knowledge and a greater technology, that we're just barely getting caught up to being able to even detect them with our modern sciences and
Mhm.
technology? Or what if it does end up being the mainstream, nuts and bolts ET hypothesis, that there are other intelligent civilizations that are coming to Earth? Does that because if you have such a viewpoint, how would you be able to say that you're comfortable in your spiritual beliefs if just one thing turns that inside out? Again, we get back to that whole reality breaking thing. What if you're somebody that believes that mankind on the earth is the only intelligent civilization that God has created, what's going to happen if you find out that that's not the case? Are you prepared to reckon yourself with that? How do you reconcile that? And, you know, thankfully, both Roger and I, we come from a belief system that teaches us that there is intelligent life out there, that we
Mhm.
are not God's only intelligent creation. We may not even be, the most advanced, but that fits into what Roger and I have been taught ever since we were young children by our particular denomination. So for us, this is all just an exciting time to be alive. And it's like, hey, this is great stuff that we're alive to hear, to watch, to see all of this
Yeah.
unfold. But I can understand the people that are really kind of worried about where this is going to lead, because for them, it could have, reality shattering consequences, and not necessarily in a good way. So I think to that end, we do have to be a little patient and understanding with people that do throw out the,
Oh,
oh,
sure.
it's
Yeah.
demons, it's the devil. Um, so I don't think that, I think that they belong to be in the conversation as well, but not to the extent to where they say it's our way or the highway, and all of you are going to hell if you continue to pursue this because you're dabbling in black magic and things like that.
Mhm.
And again, I understand where they're coming from, but it's just a fundamental difference in viewpoint um, that you just have to get around. And Roger and I have encountered a couple of people that are like that, and we just simply politely nod our heads and say, well, you have a very valid point, but I view things just a little bit differently, so we agree to disagree. And
Yeah.
that seems to be an art that we have lost just collectively over the last 20 or 30 years in our American society anyway, where it's just like you can't just simply agree to disagree anymore. You've got to just completely destroy and bury anybody that
You have to
thinks.
just disagree, disagree, disagree. That's the only
Yeah.
person that I ever came across that did that. So
Well, that's awesome. Well, Cheryl, it has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. What is next for Cheryl Carter? What can our viewers and listeners expect to come from you next?
well, I think they should check out my latest book. This is a children's book,
Aha.
Lobo's Adventure, and it's about a little wolf who wandered too far down the mesa and found himself in a magical place.
Provo, Utah, right?
Well,
uh,
he met this little ball of light called Blue, and he kind of showed him around. That's a cute little story.
awesome. I'll have to look into that. My the man that I'm named after, Jim Kelgard, was actually a famous children's writer back in the 1950s, and he always wrote about dogs and wildlife. And Walt Disney actually made a film off one of his books called Big
Oh,
Red.
nice. Oh, I
So
bet.
if you've ever read the book Big Red or seen the Disney movie, now the
Yeah,
Disney movie is quite a bit different. They just basically, stole a couple of ideas. I shouldn't say stole. They bought the rights
I
legally,
know.
but
I know.
but it's just a great story, a heartwarming story about a boy and an Irish setter dog. And so I come from the same kind of stock of what you write about, with a lot of wildlife and relationships and things like that. So it's cool to see somebody else doing that. I myself, I'm just not a writer. I'm a songwriter. I'm
I'll
musician.
see. Everybody's
All
different.
that.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah.
I just woke up one morning and something said, "Stop writing your book. You need to write this children's book." I just woke up and somebody told me I had to do this.
Right
So I
on.
just wrote it in a couple hours. I got cute little pictures in there.
That's awesome.
That's
So
awesome.
one question we ask of all of our guests, because both Roger and I are big music freaks. What kind of music do you like to listen to? What are some of your favorite artists? What's some
Oh,
of the music that helps
geez.
get
Don't make
you,
me do that. I don't
put you on the
know.
spot?
I can't pick. I like all kinds of stuff. I
Yeah,
really can't pick something. Yeah.
right on. So like
It's not country music though.
Well, everybody has their own taste where that's concerned.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll like anything except that. Okay.
So like Pink Floyd, anything like that, or
Absolutely,
uh,
absolutely.
classic rock, AC/DC, Beatles, Stones. Right on.
Well, you
Cool.
heard me mention Jay Giles, yeah.
Well, I'm a big Jay Giles fan. In fact, I was listening to the Freeze Frame album just a couple weeks ago. So good good time in my life when that album came out.
Mhm.
Right on. Well, again, Cheryl, thanks so much. Roger, did you want to end with anything? Any
No,
comments?
just thank you, Cheryl, for taking the time to meet with us today. It was a fabulous discussion, and we're definitely looking forward to syncing up again with you and all the other Skinwalker Ranch insiders at Phenomicon this year. But wish you and your family the best in all your adventures, and we will continue to be following you and looking towards your success.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Roger and I are big fans of what you're doing, and anything that we can do to help further promote the books that you're writing and the research that you're doing, let us know, because we're definitely on your side. We're definitely big
Okay,
advocates.
thanks.
So
I'll do that. I do have a website, CherylLynnCarter.com, that I
excellent.
have my adventures and different things on there. And on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook. You can get my books on Amazon.com, or if you want a signed copy, just message me on Facebook. I have a whole bunch here. I can mail them
Well,
out.
I'm gonna have to get you to sign my copy of the Basin Files, because
Okay.
Ryan signed mine, so I got to get your signature now.
Okay.
Right on. And those of you that are watching our podcast for the first time, you can find Roger and I on Facebook, The Soul of the Unexplained. That's Soul, SOL, not SOUL. So Soul of the Unexplained. And we're also on Instagram and Twitter, just not as active there. But if you have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out to us either on this YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the button to receive notifications. And Roger and I are always willing to listen to anybody's stories. If you have anything interesting for us, we'd love to hear what you have. But again, Cheryl, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. We wish you the absolute best, and like Roger says, we cannot wait to see you in September for Phenomicon Season 3.
Thanks.
Right on.
Can't wait to meet you guys again.
Right on. Well, thanks again, and we will wish you well. And I'm going to go ahead and we'll stop the recording.